Hi, my goal for this video is to help you counteract some of the adverse effects of remote communication on team performance. I'll start by discussing some of the potential effects of remote communication, which refers to communication that is not face-to-face. Then I'll suggest some solutions to help alleviate these effects. One issue is the slower establishment of trust within the group. Later, we'll discuss ways to accelerate the process of building trust remotely. Another potential issue with remote teams is that there may be a higher likelihood of team members pursuing their interests rather than focusing on the team's goals or even not doing much. While this is a possibility, there are also alternatives to address it. Additionally, it can be challenging to evaluate progress, and there is a higher likelihood of difficulties completing tasks on time within remote teams. This doesn't mean that individual or face-to-face teams don't face these issues, they do. However, these issues may be amplified within remote teams. We'll explore some options that can help us evaluate progress and ensure tasks are completed on time. These options may be the same or have a standard core set of activities that can help address these challenges. And then it also makes it difficult to reflect on how we've worked as a team. Lastly, remote communication also makes it difficult to reflect on how we worked as a team. I'm unsure if this is solely due to being a remote team or if teams generally tend to avoid this type of reflection, whether remote or face-to-face. Nevertheless, since communication is typically less rich and more complex in remote environments, it may pose a unique challenge when reflecting on team dynamics. Now that we've explored some potential adverse effects of remote work, let's look at some solutions we can implement when working remotely as a team with others. To build trust and better resolve conflicts within the group, I believe one of the critical aspects is to adapt team members' behaviors to this new virtual or remote environment where communication is mediated by technology. In this regard, it's essential to make a conscious effort to have open and transparent communication, which involves frequently communicating facts that need to be addressed and feelings and expectations. It's essential to differentiate between each of these things very clearly. When you're face-to-face with someone, it's easy to express your feelings or expectations in a way that may seem like objective facts when they're your perception, intuition, or expectations about those facts. This is even more likely to happen when working remotely. Therefore, it's essential to be very explicit and say, these are the facts, these are the data. This is how I react to these facts, how I feel when I see these data. And these are the things that I would like to happen in the future, taking into account the data and how I feel/react. This helps to clarify the distinction between facts, feelings, and expectations and promotes open and transparent communication within the remote team. You need to add a few more words so that people can always understand what you're talking about. Another important aspect is to share information frequently and anticipate when others need it. It's not enough to communicate fluently, you must also receive the information you need at the right time. In other words, you don't want to get stuck or held up because there's a gap between the person who's supposed to provide you with information and the information you have at that moment to complete the task you're currently working on. Face-to-face, you can get up and go to someone's office to ask what you need. However, when working remotely, you might send an email or a message on WhatsApp. But if the other person doesn't respond quickly, time will be lost, and you might not be able to complete specific tasks. It's essential to anticipate what information others need and provide promptly to ensure they have what they need when completing tasks. This is linked to the following behavior: adjusting the frequency of responses to this new remote environment you're in. In general, you will need faster responses than in a face-to-face setting. For example, if you're working in a group and receive an email during a break between meetings, you might take longer to respond than working remotely. When working in a remote environment, you should respond more quickly because people tend to feel more isolated or lost, and they may not know exactly what's going on with the other person or whether they'll respond. If you received something face-to-face that you could respond to tomorrow without any problems in a remote setting, you might at least have to say, I can't give this to you today, but I'll give it to you tomorrow. Is that okay? You can't make up for those little things by not being in physical contact or in the same space or location. Then you have to increase that frequency. I believe one fundamental aspect is developing trust with other team members. In face-to-face interactions, you can build that trust in different ways, such as meeting with people at the coffee machine, discussing non-work related topics and finding commonalities, which help to strengthen relationships and create bonds between team members. However, when working remotely, we typically don't have these opportunities. So we need to rely on other substitutes to develop trust with our colleagues. It's essential to meet the deadlines agreed upon with the team, meaning if certain tasks were set to be completed by a specific date, it's crucial to ensure those expectations are met. When this happens consistently over several cycles, people begin to trust you, providing you with security. People could rely on you to fulfill your part if a delivery date was established. In remote work, this is one of the critical or valuable tools we can have, as it allows us to confirm the necessary trust to work effectively. Although meeting deadlines may not always be easy, depending on the task, this trust is a fundamental foundation for teamwork. In remote teams, committing to assigned tasks is essential to generate the necessary trust and build a strong team identity. Another common problem is the tendency for some people to work individually or simply not do anything. However, this tendency can be reduced when trust is established, practical communication tools are used, deadlines are met, etc. Another aspect can be very helpful in providing feedback to team members about what has happened and what could happen based on what has occurred. It's essential to have frequent discussions about these issues and provide feedback and feed forward within the team. This responsibility doesn't fall solely on the person in charge of the group. Instead, all members can contribute as necessary. Another aspect that can prevent team members from working individually is regularly evaluating team progress and clearly understanding which tasks we're working on, the deadlines, and whether we're progressing at the expected pace. One effective solution to address this challenge is to use cloud-based task management tools for the team. While this can be useful in co-located teams, it's almost mandatory in remote teams. Just having these tools is not enough. It's essential to review and update them regularly. At the beginning of remote team collaboration, having synchronous meetings to review and edit tasks in the task management tool together may be helpful. As the group matures and becomes accustomed to using the tool effectively, we may not necessarily need to review tasks together. The task manager allows us to track them asynchronously, enabling individuals to check pending tasks and updates from others and work autonomously. However, initially, it's best to review tasks together to get familiar with the tool and realize its potential. It's necessary to schedule specific follow-up meetings to assess our work and identify areas for improvement. We must recognize that not all group tasks are equally important. Some milestones represent progress points. If there are no such tasks, we must assign one to mark our progress and provide a moment of reflection before moving to the next iteration or team task block. By now, I believe you can mitigate some of the adverse effects of remote work on team functioning, and I encourage you to practice these techniques.